Hello and welcome to your recap of the Trump trial, week 5. Reminder, this is the Stormy Daniels payoff one, if you're getting a little confused. Last week we had some riveting testimony from Stormy Daniels, followed by some incredibly boring testimony from a bunch of techie people and paralegals presenting information largely meant to corroborate the eventual testimony of one Michael Cohen, the prosecution's star witness. So we ended on Friday knowing that this week Cohen would be testifying and the prosecution would be wrapping up their case, and that is what happened. On Monday, Trump's entourage grew Monday morning with vice presidential hopefuls J.D. Vance of Ohio and 𝗬𝗓𝗏𝗡𝗏 of Alabama showing up to lend their support and denouncing the trial to reporters on the scene. Trump may be gooped and gagged by this gag order, but these fellas aren't, so they can say whatever they want and whatever they think will put them in the good graces of Trump so that he hands them the sweet, sweet vice presidency, which I don't know why anyone wants that job considering how the last Trump VP went down, but what do I know? Michael Cohen, Trump's personal attorney and fixer and the prosecution's star and also most unpredictable witness, is finally called to the stand to testify Monday morning. He's been absent from this court this whole time because witnesses aren't allowed to be in the courtroom. They can't see the testimony before they go on because that could influence their own testimony. That being said, Cohen has made it clear on his various podcasts that he has been following along. In the beginning of his testimony, Cohen's testimony centered around his background and the history with Trump. Basically, he idolized the guy. He was New York's most prominent and wealthy businessman in the 80s, and that's saying something because if the Wolf of Wall Street taught me anything, it's that there was a lot of money flowing in New York along with other illicit substances in the 80s. And Cohen watched Trump throughout this time, and then Cohen became a lawyer in the 90s and worked his way up to a partner at a New York law firm. But he really wanted to live the high life and brush elbows with his idol, Donald Trump. So he fashioned himself after Trump, and he bought property in Trump's own building. By around 2006, Cohen was a partner at a law firm in New York, and Trump invited him to join the Trump org as Trump's own personal attorney. Apparently, when Cohen got the call to join Trump, he was so eager that he just never returned to his law office ever again. Like, people were sent to collect his things, and he was like, fucking peace out. Also, I've never been a partner at a law firm, but I have been an associate attorney at a law firm, and I literally cannot imagine having to answer to Michael Cohen and do his bidding. Yikes. So Cohen's work for Trump involved bullying people, basically. He bullied people to lower Trump's bills. He bullied reporters and threatened lawsuits over negative Trump stories. Cohen was known for being a big old bully. And if you listen to him speak, I mean, it fits the bill. He sounds like a New York bully. Like, he would yell, "Hey, I'm walking here," if you accidentally ran into him on the sidewalk. So on the stand, the prosecution is basically having Cohen paint himself as this guy who was a Trump-obsessed bully, which you wouldn't think would be a good strategy given the fact that they want the jury to believe Cohen. But really, it is a good idea. It corroborates what numerous people have already said on the stand. Cohen is not a nice or pleasant guy, and it shows that he's capable of admitting his shortcomings and his mistakes. Hopefully, for the prosecution, this means that the jury will believe that he's telling the truth now. This testimony also paints him as kind of an easy target for Trump. He'd bend over backwards for the guy. He idolized him. So when Trump said jump, he did it. And the inference being that Cohen jumped when Trump said pay off Stormy Daniels so it doesn't get out before the election. And that's what the prosecution has to prove. This was all at Trump's request. None of these people acted without his permission. So after going through his background, Cohen testified just that everything required Trump's sign-off. And according to Cohen, Trump very much signed off on the Stormy Daniels payment, telling Cohen to just do it. And according to Cohen's testimony, Trump's advisors were telling him, look, you're rich. It's only $130,000. Just pay her off because this will have a huge impact on the campaign. It reminds me of that quote, how much could it cost? It's a banana. $10? It's only $130,000. Pay him off. Anyway, reminder that the Access Hollywood Grab 'em by the Pussy tape came out 1 month before the 2016 election, and the Stormy Daniels payoff happened between that leak and the election. So the prosecution is painting a picture of chaos in the Trump campaign so that they were willing to do whatever it took to suppress the Stormy Daniels story so it didn't get out and ruin his campaign any further. And according to Cohen's testimony, the payment to Stormy was very much all about the campaign. Trump's lawyers have argued, listen, this wasn't illegal, and it was It was just a payoff for an NDA, which is very normal. That happens all the time. This was just the normal course of business and was meant to protect Trump's family from finding out about his transgressions, not meant to affect the outcome of the election. So Cohen saying, no, this was all about the election, undermines that argument and fortifies the prosecution's argument that there's an underlying crime here. And Cohen testified that Trump was angry about the Stormy Daniels story potentially leaking and told him at the time, women are going to hate me. This is going to be a disaster for the campaign. And when Cohen asked Trump about the effect of Melania finding out about the affair, Cohen testified that Trump was unbothered, saying, don't worry, how long do you think I'll be on the market for? Not long. I assume referring to how quickly he would get remarried. And this made Cohen conclude that Trump's anger over Stormy Daniels was about the campaign, not about Melania finding out he had an affair. Cohen also testified that Trump was the one who told him to drag his feet on executing and paying the Stormy Daniels payment, which lines up with testimony from Daniels and her attorney, who both said that the deal almost didn't go through because Cohen just kept pushing it back and coming up with phony excuses. According to Cohen, even that was at Trump's behest as he tried to wait out the election. He said Trump told him to try to hold out until after the election, basically hanging this payment in front of Stormy Daniels to keep her silent for another month. And then, according to Cohen, Trump said, push it out past the election because if I win, it has no relevance. And if I lose, I don't really care. Again, according to Cohen, this payment was all about the election. If it was about Melania finding out, whether or not Trump won the election, he would still be concerned with paying off Daniels because he wouldn't want Melania to find out. But according to Cohen, Trump made it very clear that this payoff was about the election. He didn't really give a shit about Melania. And this is why his testimony is so important. He is the connection between the payments and Trump. He connects all the dots that the other witnesses have testified to at this point. He has all the information, and he's at the center of this case. He is also a bully and a convicted perjurer. That's a risky person to put on the stand. But according to reporters in the room, Cohen stayed in line. He was not hostile the way that many thought he might be. He didn't start running his mouth. He kept his answers concise and to the point, and his story lined up with previous testimony given in this case, plus testimony that Cohen himself has given in other cases. And throughout his testimony, the prosecution was very careful to back up every single one of his assertions with documentary evidence or prior testimony. Again, they want the jury to feel secure that this time he's telling the truth. This time he's credible. And that's the jury's role that they have to play. It all rests on who they find most believable and whether, if the witnesses are believable, what they say amounts to a crime. So the prosecution relied as little as possible on just the word of Michael Cohen. It's the word of Michael Cohen and this documentary evidence or that testimony you already heard the other day. And that call data evidence is important because the vast majority of Cohen's interactions with Trump were in person or via phone calls because Trump does not have email. And according to Cohen, Trump explicitly said he doesn't have email because that's how you go down, meaning that's how others have gotten caught. Like, this is some old school mob shit. It is so sketchy. Cohen's testimony was largely a retelling of what we've already heard just from his perspective. His communications with David Pecker at the National Enquirer about the doorman who made up the story about the illegitimate child and paying him off, the Karen McDougal payoff, the meeting at Trump Tower with David Pecker where Pecker agreed to the catch and kill scheme where he would publish negative stories about Trump's opponents, publish positive stories about Trump, and bury any negative Trump stories. Which, can we just pause on this piece of this whole case? Not only did the National Enquirer, albeit a not reliable news source, but a source where people get their news nonetheless, agree to kill negative stories about Trump, they also agreed to push stories that were negative about his opponents, including completely fabricated stories. For example, there was one about Tom Cruise's father, where they published a photo allegedly showing his father with Lee Harvey Oswald, the Kennedy assassinator, handing out pro-Fidel Castro pamphlets in New Orleans in 1963. Trump repeatedly referred to that story during his campaign, and the photo was completely faked. And on top of this sleazy tabloid directly influencing a presidential election with fake news, they sent every single story, every bad one and every favorable one about Trump, to Cohen ahead of time, before the story was ever published, according to Cohen. So they're working directly with a presidential candidate in order to publish salacious and untrue material that every American sees as they're standing in line at the grocery checkout aisle. That should give us all pause, at the very least. Just saying. All right, then, even after the National Enquirer went to these lengths, Trump stiffed them for the payoffs so that by the time the Stormy Daniels story came around, they wouldn't pay her off, and it fell on Cohen. We've already heard this. Cohen's testimony just backs that up. He also testified that he lied to the bank when he opened the account that the Daniels payment ultimately was paid out from. It all lines up with what we already heard. This is also where all that boring testimony from last week about cell phone data comes in. They had cell service representatives on the stand, like I said, to confirm, yes, this phone call happened, so that now the prosecution can ask Cohen what happened on the calls and point to hard evidence that the calls happened to back up what he's saying. He said he had a conversation with Trump updating him about the McDougal payoff, and the prosecution pointed to cell phone records confirming the call took place, etc. Cohen testified that right before the Stormy Daniels payoff, he had a final phone call with Trump to okay everything because, according to Cohen, everything required Trump's sign-off. And Cohen said he also wanted to make sure he would get his money back. So he wasn't just going to send this money willy-nilly. He wanted assurances from the horse's mouth that he would get reimbursed for his $130,000. And that makes sense. And I think the jurors will find that testimony pretty credible and relevant. He had no personal skin in the game other than wanting to protect Trump. He had no personal motivation to suppress the Stormy Daniels story. On top of that, he took out a $130,000 home equity line of credit, which he hid from his wife in order to pay Stormy Daniels off. That's a huge personal risk to take on his part, and the fact that he had no personal interest in the outcome speaks both to the lengths he was willing to go to for Trump and also to the fact that he didn't just pay her off of his own accord. This was, according to him, clearly directed by Trump. He would not have just done this on his own, and that's super key to all of this. Cohen connects the dots, and there is no motive for him to have done this other than at the behest of Trump. He was not in a position to say, oh, this looks bad, let me just take care of it out of the kindness of my heart and devotion to Trump. He did Trump's bidding. That's the whole point. I also think it's been clearly established beyond a reasonable doubt at this point that there's not a lot of kindness in Michael Cohen's heart, okay? Cohen's testimony then turned to the aftermath of the payment, how he had to wait to get reimbursed, how he thought he would be the hero for going to such lengths to suppress the story, that he would get credit for it. Instead, they slashed his bonus that year by 2/3, and Trump snubbed him by not giving him a position in the administration like Cohen wanted. Or more specifically, he wanted to be at least considered for chief of staff, but was instead offered the position of assistant chief counsel, which he turned down. And that, at least according to Cohen, is his villain origin story. Or, I guess, reverse origin story, because then he was eventually so pissed and felt so hurt that he switched and started cooperating with the government and agreeing to testify against Trump. So, hero origin story? Formerly villainous king? But that switch didn't happen until a little later. He also testified that there was a 2017 meeting between him, Allen Weisselberg, and Trump in Trump Tower in which Trump explicitly agreed to the reimbursement plan for Cohen, that Trump approved of the plan to label the reimbursement as legal fees in the company's books, that the written document showing Allen Weisselberg's handwriting, adding up the amount and adding money for taxes to make it look like income, was shown to Trump, and Trump approved it. That is pretty much the most direct and damning piece of testimony we've gotten that directly ties Trump to the scheme and implicates him for authorizing it. Now the question is whether the jury believes Cohen, and that is yet to be seen. And that's how testimony on Monday ended. Tuesday morning saw even more Trump loyalists, including J.D. Vance again, but also House Speaker Mike Johnson. Don't you have better things to do, sir? Aren't you on the clock? Aren't my tax dollars literally paying your salary right now, sir? Congress was in session on Tuesday, and the Speaker of our House of Representatives was at Trump's criminal trial to support him. He literally had to send the House a communication and designate a speaker pro tempore per House rules since he wasn't there that day. So he was like, yeah, hey guys, this guy Larry's going to take over for me today. Sorry, can't be there. And it just goes to show, no one wants to work these days. So Tuesday began where Monday left off, with Cohen on the stand being questioned by the prosecution. And this day started pretty dry, with Cohen going through each individual payment to confirm that he received it. This is important because there are 34 counts against Trump, and those counts are based on individual documents listing Cohen's repayments as legal fees, which the prosecution alleges was a lie meant to cover up the underlying crime of trying to affect the outcome of the election. And these repayments are at the center of the case, so they need Cohen to confirm them. And they likely saved this boring testimony for Tuesday morning because being fresh in the morning will help keep jurors more alert and awake and paying attention, even though it's boring. And these court proceedings can get long. If you've ever spent an entire day just watching court, it gets really fucking boring, especially in the afternoon when it's just warm and it's kind of quiet in there. You just want to curl up in a ball and sleep. So again and again, Cohen confirmed that there was no retainer agreement with Trump. He was not doing legal services for him. The payments were not for legal fees. They were reimbursements, and the descriptions on the check stubs were false, and the signature on each check was Donald J. Trump's, over and over and over again, which was likely pretty powerful in itself for the jurors. This check is a lie, and there's Trump's original hand-signed, non-digital signature on it, over and over and over again. Now, despite the slashed bonus and snubs for work in the White House, Cohen stayed on Trump's side through 2018, including lying to Congress during its investigation into potential ties between Russia and the 2016 Trump campaign. When asked why he lied, he said it was because he was staying on Trump's message, that there was no collusion. And this continues the story of Cohen, the Trump devotee, who did anything to protect his boss and is meant to soften the blow when the defense invariably brings up on cross that Cohen is a convicted perjurer. Better to address it head on than make the jury think you're trying to skirt around it. He also admitted to lying to the Wall Street Journal when he denied the Stormy Daniels affair, agreeing to take the fall for Trump by saying he paid her off himself without Trump's knowledge. And then comes the ultimate betrayal, the final piece of the reverse villain origin story puzzle. Cohen's home is raided. He's accused of breaking the law in relation to the Stormy Daniels payment and lying about it. Trump shoots off a flurry of tweets praising Cohen as someone who would never do what they're accusing him of. Trump calls him to say, hey, don't worry, I'm the president. You're going to be okay. Basically, according to Cohen, he's being buttered up so that he doesn't rat on Trump. And that's the last time he ever spoke to Trump directly. Then Cohen gets a communication from a man named Costello, who identifies himself as a friend of Rudy Giuliani, and he told Cohen that he should hire Giuliani and then assured him to sleep well tonight. You have friends in high places. Basically, Trump was putting up a wall of separation between himself and Cohen. Now, instead of Cohen being in his direct orbit like he was for a decade, the communications with Trump went to Costello, who relayed them to Giuliani, Trump's new lawyer squeeze, who then told Trump. And it was all through coded words. Costello would refer to Giuliani as my friend and Trump as my friend's client, kind of a wink and a nod. So there was nothing in writing connecting Trump with Cohen while Cohen was under federal investigation. Cohen, despite taking the fall on the Stormy Daniels story, despite taking out the second mortgage on his house to finance her payoff, was pushed out. That was the final straw. Cohen testified that his family pushed him to turn on Trump, and he did so to show loyalty to my wife, my son, my daughter, and my country. Also, can you imagine Michael Cohen being your dad? Yikes. And so he pleaded guilty to federal charges regarding the hush money payment and other unrelated crimes and received a reduced sentence because he agreed to work with the government. When he pled guilty, Cohen testified that's when Trump turned on him. Remember, Trump prioritizes loyalty above all else, which is a key ingredient for being a good dictator. So when you drop your loyalty, the fangs are going to come out. Truly, it's the definition of an abusive relationship. And for Trump, the fangs coming out means mostly a lot of mean tweets. And speaking of mean tweets, during the trial on Tuesday, the appeals court made its ruling upholding the gag order against Trump, the one he's been found in violation of 10 times and counting. Yeah, that one. One of his lawyer's many appeals involved challenging the validity of the gag order, which the appeals court ruled was valid and denied Trump's appeal. Again and again, he's called this a sham trial, and again, judges have been upholding everything this lower court judge is doing. And at noon on Tuesday, the prosecution finished its direct examination of Michael Cohen. After a lunch break, it was the defense's turn to conduct cross-exam of Michael Cohen. A reminder, again, that the defense's job is really just to poke holes in the story the prosecution is presenting. They don't have to present their own alternative story. The defense's strategy has been to say, hey, nothing about this was actually illegal. It was all normal course of business, an innocent NDA, and even if it was illegal, Trump didn't know about it. And in order to uphold that story, they need to undermine all of Cohen's testimony, basically. And they're going to do so by either pointing out inconsistencies in his story or calling his credibility into question. There are a lot of opportunities for the defense to question his credibility given his background, which is why the prosecution did so much legwork to not only back up all of his assertions with evidence or prior testimony, but also to get out ahead of the defense and acknowledge Cohen's baggage, that he isn't likable, that he was a bully, that he lied to Congress, that he lied to a lot of other people, and that he went to prison for it. They're saying to the jury, yes, this man has done a lot of bad shit, but this time he is telling the truth. And it's just the defense's job to say, I don't know, is he? And get just one juror to say, actually, I don't know. And the hard part about that job is that the prosecution has the ability to kind of craft and shape their story through the witness testimony and their questioning. And then the defense comes in and is just kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall to get the jurors to start doubting it all. And that can get messy and backfire if you lose the jurors in the course of your cross-exam. And that seems to be what happened to the defense when they started cross-exam of Michael Cohen after lunch on Tuesday. The defense opened its cross-examination of Cohen by asking Cohen about a TikTok he posted in which he referred to the defense attorney as a crying little shit, which Cohen said, sounds like something I would say. After that, the judge summoned the attorneys to the bench and basically asked the defense attorney why he was making this questioning about him, the defense attorney, and not about the case at hand. The question was ultimately stricken from the record, and after that, reporters in the courtroom said the defense attorney, 𝗪𝗏𝗪, kind of lost his footing. He was less sure of himself. He didn't find good pacing of his questioning after this, and there was a lot of stops and starts due to frequent objections from the prosecution. Again, just like in their opening arguments, the defense's questions appeared to present the argument that Cohen was obsessed with Trump, hateful of him, and just a scorned ex-business associate out for revenge and trying to profit off his proximity to Trump through his podcasts and t-shirt sales and book sales. The entire first half hour of cross-exam was just focused on Cohen's past comments and behavior, which was trying to establish his lack of credibility before even getting into questions about the hush money payments. Cross-exam also delved into Cohen's interactions with prosecutors and others while he was in prison, which alluded to Cohen's attempts to get his sentence reduced. So the defense is also trying to paint the picture that Cohen had ulterior motives for cooperating with the government, that he just wanted a reduced sentence, so maybe he would say anything to get that sentence reduced. Again, they don't have to prove that. They're just saying to the jury, are you sure you believe him? That's all they have to do. Then court wrapped up for the day on Tuesday in the middle of Cohen's cross-examination. The defense confirmed that their cross-exam would last through the day on Thursday, so if they have any witnesses to call, the defense wouldn't call them until next week. And on Tuesday, they told the judge they still didn't know if Trump would testify, so their witnesses are still a mystery at this point. Each side is required to provide a list of potential witnesses before the start of a trial, so anytime you see a surprise witness on TV trials, please know that that's inaccurate. Both sides know at least who could potentially testify, but each side can call whomever they want from that list they provided, or at least for the defense, they can call no one. So that's how we wrapped on Tuesday. On Wednesday, there was no court. There's no court on Wednesdays in this trial. So then we get to Thursday. Cross-examination continued Thursday morning. It was a slow start to the day with the lawyers calling for many sidebars, the prosecution objecting to many questions, and Cohen asking the defense attorney, 𝗪𝗏𝗪, to rephrase his questions over and over again. Much like the prosecution used Trump's own words against him by having people come from his publishing companies put on the stand to read excerpts from Trump's books, the defense is using Michael Cohen's words against him by having the jury hear excerpts from Cohen's podcasts, because Cohen has been running his mouth about Trump. So they have a lot of material to work with. Earlier in his testimony, Cohen confirmed that he has been disbarred and is now making a living through entertainment, mainly his podcast and merch sales. In one clip, Cohen says he hoped that Trump ends up in prison. This is what the defense played. This again calls into question his motivation for testifying and his credibility. Is he just saying these things because he has a personal vendetta against Trump? The defense is saying maybe. Cohen is also louder, more vulgar, and more animated in the podcast than he has been during the trial. And I think that's important because he's been really staid and stoic and calm throughout the trial, which was unexpected. But this is a good way for the defense to be like, okay, this is an act. Here's how he really sounds. So if he's putting on this act, how much of what he's said can you really believe? After grilling Cohen about his social media and podcasts, the defense switched gears to focus in on Cohen's perjury, which we knew they would do because, frankly, if they didn't, that would be negligent lawyering. When you have a witness who's been convicted of committing perjury, that is some low-hanging fruit for making the jury doubt his credibility. The defense attorney also had Cohen confirm the numerous times that he's blamed various other people for his personal and legal problems, including his accountant, federal prosecutors, a federal judge, and Trump himself, painting a picture of a man who can't really take accountability for his own actions, contrary to what he wants the jury to believe. Again, they're just planting seeds of doubt. He says that he lied and that he feels bad about it, but he has a history of shirking responsibility for his actions. So what can you really believe? Basically, over and over again, the defense attempted to attach Cohen to every lie he's ever told, because that's the main way to undermine a witness's credibility. He's a proven liar. He has lied over and over. He lied here, here, and here. He was lying then, and so how can we know that he's not lying now? And again, this man runs his mouth, so they have a lot of instances to point to. I'm not going to go through all of them. Suffice it to say, this man has said one thing and then flip-flopped a lot throughout the years, sometimes criminally so. Okay, actually, I will bring up one instance because I think it's interesting. Last year, Cohen, through his own attorney, filed a petition to have his post-prison probation ended early. As part of that application, Cohen was doing his own legal research. He is a former attorney, after all, probably saved on legal fees by doing the research himself. And in the course of that research, he used AI, I assume ChatGPT, they didn't say, and ChatGPT or whatever tool he was using gave him citations to 3 different cases that backed up his legal argument. The problem was that those cases didn't actually exist. And instead of checking the citations, Cohen sent them to his lawyer directly from ChatGPT's mouth, and his lawyer then used those citations in his petition to back up his arguments, because his lawyer assumed that since Cohen is a lawyer, he knew what he was doing. So just for those of you who are doing your own legal research or going to law school, or if you're a literal actual lawyer, holy shit, do not rely on AI for facts of any kind. I know it's a pretty new, fangled technology, but damn. But I do love seeing little examples of this, of how AI is slowly weaseling its way into the legal profession in unexpected ways. So it kind of sounds like the legal profession is safe from total AI takeover, at least for now. So despite some slow stop and starts that made cross-exam drag on, get pretty boring, and lose the interest of many jurors, according to reporters in the room, there were some heated moments. One exchange involved the defense attempting to undermine one of Cohen's most important pieces of testimony, that he spoke with Trump via phone call days before wiring the Stormy Daniels money to confirm with Trump about the hush money payment and Cohen's reimbursement. Cohen's earlier testimony said he called Trump's bodyguard just after 8 p.m. on October 24th, 2016, because he knew Trump would be with him. But according to the defense, that same night, Cohen was dealing with harassing phone calls that he was apparently receiving from some random 14-year-old kid. Cohen texted Trump's bodyguard that night to see what he could do about harassing calls to his cell phone in office, to which Trump's bodyguard responded, "Call me." So he did, and the call lasted 1 minute and 36 seconds. The defense pointed out that Cohen lied when he said he was talking to Trump on that phone call about the Daniels deal, because Cohen was actually talking to the bodyguard about the harassing phone calls from a 14-year-old. To which Cohen responded that on that call, he discussed both the harassment and also the Daniels deal with Trump, to which the defense attorney got very heated, saying, "You had enough time in that 1 minute and 36 seconds to update the bodyguard about all the problems you were having with this harassing phone call, and also update President Trump on the status of the Stormy Daniels situation?" To which Cohen responded, "Yes, I believe I was telling the truth." To which the defense attorney retorted, "We are not asking for your belief. This jury does not want to hear what you think happened." Apparently very loudly, to which the prosecution objected. After a lunch break and probably some deep breathing exercises for the defense, Cohen was back on the stand to continue cross-exam for the afternoon on Thursday. The defense dove into Cohen's propensity to record conversations he had with other people. Specifically, again, they brought up the secret recording he took of Trump agreeing to the Karen McDougal payoff. We talked about this recording before. It's where Trump suggests paying in cash, which is sketchy. Cohen claims he made the recording to send to David Pecker of the National Enquirer to assure him that Trump was good for the money and was going to pay them back. back. However, the defense pointed out that it's incredibly unethical to record a conversation you have with your legal client. That is privileged communication that you are not allowed to share. The defense attorney asked, just so I understand, you surreptitiously recorded your client so that you could play a privileged communication for a third party. To which Cohen said, yeah. Cohen also testified that he often recorded his conversations with people without their knowledge, especially reporters, and when they asked if he was recording them, he would say no. Cohen testified, hey, it's not illegal in New York for him to have done that, which is true. New York is a one-party consent state, meaning you can record your conversation with someone as long as one party consents to it, the one party being you because you didn't tell the other person, obviously. But the defense attorney said, Mr. Cohen, I did not ask you if you were breaking the law. I just asked you if you were surreptitiously recording people. This is all, again, to paint the picture that Cohen is a big fat liar, pants on fire. And honestly, at least in my secondhand reading of the questioning, it's starting to kind of work on me. This is a man who made a career out of doing whatever he could to scramble his way to the top and remain in the good graces of Trump, a man who doesn't believe that the law applies to him. Cohen, who modeled himself after Trump, also seems to not believe that the law applies to him. This man is sleazy as hell. But the question is not, do I like him, or even do I think he's generally a lying piece of shit? The question is, does the jury think he's telling the truth this time? And the prosecution, like I said, has made every effort to back up every single thing he's said with hard evidence or the testimony of other, presumably more credible witnesses. Moving on, the defense got Cohen to testify that in 2016 and 2017, he was receiving hundreds of phone calls every day. So the defense argued, if Cohen was receiving, by his estimates, over 50,000 phone calls each year, how could Cohen testify that he remembers specific details about certain of those phone calls? According to Cohen, he recalls them well because these phone calls are things I've been talking about for the last 6 years. They were and are extremely important. But I thought that that was a good point on the defense's part. And also, hundreds of phone calls a day, I would throw my phone in the river. Couldn't be me. The afternoon on Thursday moved away from the awkward stop-and-start testimony of the morning, with the defense attorney getting more aggressive. And this has an effect on the jury because it keeps them interested and also brings out, at least in theory, the more aggressive side of Cohen, which he's worked hard to suppress during his testimony. Thursday wrapped up with Cohen still on the witness stand for cross-examination. There was no court on Friday so that Trump could attend the high school graduation of his son Barron. And then I've heard, at least, that Trump came here to Minnesota to attend the GOP's annual Lincoln-Reagan dinner. So Cohen will be back on the stand on Monday, where the defense is expected to wrap up cross-exam. The prosecution will then do probably about an hour of redirect questioning of Cohen. The prosecution may call one final expert witness who will likely give short testimony. And then that will be the end of the prosecution's case. The defense still has not confirmed whether Trump will testify or not, and it's unclear who the defense will ultimately call to the witness stand, if anyone. Next week is also a short week given the holiday weekend, so scheduling's a bit shaky at the moment. So we really don't know what's going to happen next week. It could be that the defense has a few witnesses to call, potentially Donald John Trump himself, and their case will stretch all of next week and maybe even into the week after that. It could be that they call no one, and closing arguments could happen as early as Tuesday. We really don't know. The judge will then give the jury instructions, which takes some time because he has to make sure that the jury understands the law so that they can apply the facts to the law. And then the jury will deliberate, and who knows how long that will take. So a pretty unpredictable week next week, but I'll be here next Saturday to fill you in on all the tea. Thanks so much for watching. Have a really great day. Bye-bye.